Welcome in, Sneeples. Pro Tour London is right around the corner, and we have a tier list of the most represented heroes that we expect to see in Pro Tour London. This tier list will be based on representation in the meta, but it will also be showing us what we expect to see in the top 8. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, here's our tier list. Everyone loves a good tier list, so let's get into making our tier list. If you plan on going to Pro Tour London, I want to do this first, because if you plan on going to Pro Tour London, I have a Patreon. If you join the data tier list, you will get hero representation. I'll show this one. This is a little freebie. I'll show you what the hero representation is. But you also get limited draft rankings. This is blurred. You got to get this one. This shows you where you need to draft. I have extensive card review for draft. I have draft archetypes. I grade the cards. You can see here, each card is graded. That's all you get right now. You can see all this. We give you the grades. We give you a summary. We give you everything. And then finally, we even have every deck that has top 8'd a battle horn calling in this season. We compiled this all into one list, so you can see what decks are playing what, and it's all in one location. So this data is worth the $10 a month. Get it. I promise you, it will help you out in Pro Tour London. Now let's get back to our tier list. So in our tier list, we take all that data that I just showed you, and we use that to decide where everything is going to be placed. All right, there's no gut feelings here. I'll give you my gut feeling whenever I choose who's going to win the Pro Tour, but this is all based on data. And the data shows us that Aurora is the most popular hero. There's no doubt about it. If you are going to Pro Tour London, expect to play against this hero. This is what is going to have the most numbers in Pro Tour London and is the premier aggro deck. All right, so now let's go from the bottom up. Let's go over the no-shows, what decks we don't expect to see. Katsu's among them. I don't think his new card is going to give him any help. It hasn't yet. I actually think there will be a few Boltons. Dash IE is another one. Max, the Armory deck's not out yet. I'm not even sure if that Armory deck's helping them out too much. Olympia, that's not going to be in, as well as Betsy, Original Arachne, Teklo-Vossen. I think that's about it. I think everyone else. Well, actually, there's one more. I don't think Acilio is going to be there. I think Acilio is just way too inconsistent and too high rolly to be able to make it. On top of that, there's draft, right? So you have to be good at draft and get lucky with Acilio to make any sort of progress. And so I'm hoping that people are testing for this, that are going and just kind of realize that maybe Acilio isn't the right choice. All right, so let's talk about the heroes that we will see in day 1, but unfortunately will not have the numbers to convert to day 2. I think you actually could just join day 2 no matter what, but you know what I mean. It's not going to be in the top 64. Let's go ahead and rip the band-aid off for myself here, and I'm going to put Verdance here. I really like Verdance. I am going to probably make a video for the ProQuest season coming up on how to play Verdance, so how you can win your ProQuest with Verdance. I do think she's very viable. I just don't think that the players that are going to be able to make her very viable are playing her. I think they're playing other heroes instead, which I understand as a Verdance player, but it's unfortunate. I do think she will show up, but just won't be there numbers wise, unfortunately. KO is the same deal. I think KO is another solid deck, but it's just not the premier aggro deck. It's just not going to have the numbers that the other aggro heroes will have, which is Aurora and the 2 ninjas. So next up is, let's go ahead and do Uzuri. Uzuri here again. So I'm kind of narrating as if like this is gut feeling. This is more for entertainment value, but Uzuri just doesn't have the numbers. We can see that in the stats as far as meta representation. She's not coming out in numbers, as well as she doesn't really have the top 8 success Yes, she has made top 8. We know about that. We can go here again. If we look at, if you have access to the data, you can see she made a Battlehardened Charlotte with Colin Swisher. So Colin got her there, but she's only had one, right? So compared to these heroes that we are going to see up here, it's not a lot. It's not a lot. It's not enough. Riptide, we haven't seen him in top 8. He has showed up in numbers though, and I do think there might be a few Riptide players out there, trying to bank on getting Aurora, but yeah, I don't know if we're going to see the conversion into the top 64. Kano is kind of the same way. Again, another wizard here. Wizards, Kano especially, is just not consistent enough to be able to put himself in a higher position. You do have to kind of get a little bit lucky. He is more consistent than Acilio, but still, it's a tightrope you're walking on when you're playing Kano. Bolton is a hero that has a lot of stands. There's a lot of Bolton stands out there, so he will have some representation. I don't think he's going to get far based on his results in this meta. Same deal with Levia. There's a lot of Levia stands, but again, I don't think she's primed to be in a good spot. Reinar has surprisingly seen some success, and I do think there are going to be a few Reinars out there, especially Chandler Toe and Eugene C. But I don't think he's going to have the success of the underdog here, or the dark horse. I think he will kind of just fall where we expect to see him fall. But miracles can happen. Kasai, kind of the same way. It's just too fast of a format for her, and she's just not getting any representation. There might be one or two Kasai players out there to try to navigate her to a win, but I don't see it currently. And then we finally have Bravo. This is kind of like Bolton and Levi. There's a lot of Bravo stands out there. I just think this is where it stops though. Okay, now on to top 64. So top 64, that's basically like day 2ing, right? It's coming out ahead, and I think Dash IL is good enough to top 64. I think she's a little bit inconsistent to go any further, but she can be racing with the most aggro decks. She has that potential. I just don't think she gets too much further past that. Dorinthia is the same way. Dawnblade Dorinthia has a snowball effect that allows her to be aggressive. She's also playing CYB for the longer game, so it's a very interesting combination, but I don't think we're going to get, again, just not getting past 64, just kind of being held down by being a talentless hero, unfortunately. Speaking of talentless heroes, Azalea, we've seen Azalea have some success in Battlehardened Portland, but that was it. We haven't saw her have any success after the fact, right? So no like recent success like Dorinthia and Dash IO has. So it's a little disappointing, and her numbers aren't quite there to support her, but she has had success, so I do think she will be making top 64. Fang is a very interesting one. Fang just won a Battlehardened. This is probably, Fang and Dorinthia are probably the highest. We have no more warriors, so they are the highest of the ranked warriors. I do think there are going to be some Fang players out there, and some of them will see some success. They'll probably be drafting Fang as well, right? Like they'll know how to play his hero through both formats, and I do think that's going to give a little bit of success for the Fang, but I don't think we're going to quite hit the money here, unfortunately. Victor is kind of the same way. Can just get the right matchups to hit a top 64, but there's too much of the wrong matchups to prevent or that stopping Victor from hitting top 32. Jarl's the same way, right? These Guardians and Warriors, it's just not quite their set. They're good heroes, but just not quite their set. If Syndra was more of a presence, then I do think these heroes go up a little bit more. And she will be a presence, but it's not just Syndra, right? If Syndra was the most popular, then these heroes probably go up, but it's Aurora, so we do have to look at things a little bit differently. Now let's talk about the two Arachnes. They are right here as well. Both of these heroes have had great initial success, but has really fell off since then. Christchurch and Memphis are where we saw both of them have a good amount of representation in top 8. We saw a good amount of meta representation overall, but it's really been waning as of late. So we're not really seeing the success be repeated. And so I think they're kind of getting figured out a little bit, or because they share a class with one of the more successful assassins, they're not having the numbers to help them get to a top 32, because sometimes you just need numbers to get to top 32. All right, so let's talk about top 32. Let's talk about the heroes that make it. All right, so first and foremost, I'm putting Enigma here. Now, Enigma is one of the ones that I have in top 32 and not likely in top 8 because of her matchups. Her matchups would suggest that she can't quite get there. However, all right, so we made this tier list based on data. This isn't gut feelings. If I'm going on gut feelings, some of the best players play Enigma, and that alone gives her a very good shot at top 8. So I have her at the top of top 32 because, I mean, I haven't really put anything in order quite really, but if things were in order, I'd probably put her in the top because I do think she's a really good hero. But going off of numbers, going off of representation, she is going to have to really, fight, scratch, and claw her way to get to a top 8. I think she is good enough to make top 32 solidly, but she would have to work a little bit harder than some of the other heroes to make top 8. And I do think there's potential for that. Vincent is one that is really getting a boost from the meta. Vincent has a fairly good play into some of the top 8 heroes. She has a good play into the most popular hero, and she even has good play into some of the top 32 heroes. So that's going to help her out a lot, right? These heroes are based on meta representation, and so if numbers alone, Vincent has good matchups into a good amount of the field, then there's a good chance she's going to do very well if you play Vincent. The only downside of Vincent is there is a hint of inconsistency when it comes to Vincent. She does kind of want, being a Rune Blade, she does kind of want a hand of non-attack action and attack actions. You can just get that Rune Blade hand, all attack actions or all non-attack actions. And maybe you're also put in a weird spot where now you're having to block with more than you really want to. You're having to, take a little bit more blood depth than you really anticipated. It's just, things can get a little weird with Vincent, and I think that's what's going to keep her out of the top 8. But in a top 32 situation, I think we'll see 1 or 2 for sure. All right, next up is Florian. Florian's a little bit like Vincent. Florian has a generally good matchup to the meta, but isn't particularly, heavily favored into any matchup really, and does have a bad matchup into Enigma. So I think Florian is more of a skill check hero, and I do think a lot of people are going to be playing Florian. I do think Florian will have the numbers because he's had this recent success, and so I do think Florian will be seen in the top 32 at probably like 4 or 5. If one makes top 8, I wouldn't be surprised, but I think he's a solid top 32 for sure. Prism's another one. I do think Prism's days aren't as good as they were in the beginning, especially when Syndra was so big. I do think she's kind of faltered off a little bit, but I do think this is a meta where she can perform very well. And I think just that alone is going to be enough for her to make top 32. Prism stands are out there. She is going to get played. So she will have the numbers to help propel her to there as well. So I do think we are going to see a good amount of Prisms in top 32 as well. And then finally, we have Ira. Ira, again, here has taken a bit of a downward swing since Viscerai's banning, but is still there.
Still a dual threat sort of hero. I mean, literally playing the card dual threat, but being able to kind of be more defensive and aggressive really helps her out, I think. And then just being able to have just good numbers. Like Ira is the good numbers deck, and the good numbers deck is going to help keep all the matchups around, 50 to 50, 45 to 50%. You're never having a really bad matchup. You're never having a really good matchup. Something similar to Florian. I think that is why I would expect to see one or two in the top 32. All right. And then Fi's in the no-show. That he was hiding near Syndra, so he snuck in. We're not going to see any Fi's. All right, so let's talk about our top 8 heroes. So first off, we got New. New is going to be heavily represented. New is something similar to Enigma. A lot of the good players are going to be playing New. That's just a matter of fact. She's going to have the numbers to help put her there, and she is good into the meta to help put her in top 8. We're going to see a New in top 8. Wouldn't surprise me if we see 2 News in top 8. If we saw 3, I'd be a little surprised, but 2 doesn't surprise me at all. We are going to see a New in top 8. I don't think that's a doubt. Now, these other 2 heroes, these 2 ninjas here, might surprise you a little bit. Zen, I don't think should surprise you. I think seeing a Zen, at least, just like one Zen in top 8 is a solid thing to predict. Zen is just good right now. He has been able to create such a sideboard plan into New and to other decks that look to be his quote-unquote bad matchup to make them more even. New is not like a 40% or less matchup anymore. It's like a 45, maybe even closer to 50. And that's why Zen is so powerful, because Zen can still be aggressive even after the fact. So he's consistent enough with his armor. So I think Zen making top 8 makes sense. Now, Syndra might be the big surprise here. And here's the reason. Syndra hasn't had top 8 results in a while. Or she has, actually. I think it was in Kobe she had one. But for the amount that she is represented as far as people bringing Syndra, she doesn't convert too well. However, her numbers do. So I'm going to show you a graph here. Again, if you go to the data, you can have access to stuff like this. Here is Aurora. You can see why we have Aurora as the most popular. Let's go find Syndra. This orange one here. All right, so Syndra started kind of low, went up pretty high, and then just kind of stayed in this area. So she's the 3rd most represented. So despite her not having, like, she had initial success here and had some success in these areas, there hasn't been any Syndras here in Kali Sao Paulo, but you can see that her numbers are still there, right? Zen's the same way. Zen stayed, or it was high, and then it's like going back to that point. So you can see why I have these as far as the representation, what is likely to hit top 8. Now, I wouldn't be too surprised if we don't see a Syndra, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do. Syndra is kind of a deck that is being figured out, but with her numbers alone, it wouldn't surprise me if we see one in top 8. Now, what we're going to see in top 8 is, my prediction is this, all right? We're going to see 2 to 3 Auroras, 1 to 2 News, 1 Zen, 1 Syndra. All right, so that's what? Let's go 3, 5, 6, 7, and an Enigma. We'll say is 8. And I think Enigma wins it. And I will say last time I chose correctly was I chose Michael Fang on Oldham. Michael Fang does play Enigma, but I want to give it to someone else. I'm going to choose Vespa. I like Vespa's kind of spicy takes on lists, especially Illusionist, that's all that Vespa plays. And I kind of like Vespa's Enigma list that he has done very well with. He has made 2 top 8s with her, so I think Vespa on Enigma will win this whole thing. Now, the only other hero that I didn't mention in top 8 that I could see in top 8 is Florian. I could see a 1 of Florian in top 8 as well. I do think Florian's very good. But I think keeping it these 5 here, I am very comfortable with. So that is my top 8.
And there it is, our tier list. So again, if you plan on participating in Pro Tour London and you want a little bit more data, a little bit more limited advice, consider becoming a Patreon, which you can find in the link below. If you just like our YouTube videos and you want chances to win cool prizing like this, consider becoming a member, where we give out prizes to our members as well as have exclusive content. So again, thank you to our members we have now. Thank you to our sponsors, and keep on fabbing.